There are a lot of underrated JRPGs that really needs more attention across different platforms, which is why I handpicked some of my favorite old classic JRPGs and put it all together. You may plead your case since my lawyer ain't going anywhere. Nah, just kidding. Here are some of the best underrated JRPGs that I feel that needs more recognition by the gaming community, especially those who love JRPGs. I just wanna explain being underrated means it's being overlooked, and it's not only about games that are obscure, but some known and famous games can become underrated as well. Disclaimer, there are a little bit of spoilers in this video, so beware. Without further ado, here are the part 2 of the top 10 underrated JRPGs, starting with number 10. First on my list is a game I recently platinum on my PS4. It's quite grindy, but it's worth all the hard work. Shining Resonance, Refrain by Mediavision and Sega, plays like a pretty standard yet extremely solid JRPG. Despite the slow beginning, the story is interesting and extremely well thought out. The game follows Yuma Ilvern, who holds the spirit of the Shining Dragon. After being rescued from an empirical prison, he joins forces with a smaller rival kingdom which houses powerful individuals known as Dragonies and Diva Magicas. The story is presented with character dialogues and cutscenes. It does a decent job in introducing you to them slowly enough that you don't feel as if you're drowning. While simple, the story provides a deep, lengthy, and at times really dark adventure. The combat kinda reminds me of Tales of Games. It's action in a certain area of the screen once you encounter enemies in the field. The protagonist can transform into Shining Dragon. At first, it's quite uncontrollable, but as you progress, he'll be a great advantage in boss fight. You can explore the town, buy equipments, do side quests, and interact with characters to create relationships, and I love how you can do it with the hot guys as well. Despite the flaws, Shining Resonance Refrain is a game that's easy to fall in love with. Whether it's the connections you make with characters or the mastery you gain of its combat system, it grows on you over time. It's a title that accomplishes a lot in terms of depth without ever looking too complicated on the surface. Some people might actually look at it and think it's too simple, but its complexities lie under the surface, waiting for players to tinker and experiment with all it has to offer. Next is Tokyo Xanadu. Why did I sing it like that? Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus is a 2015 action role-playing game developed by Nihon Falcom. The game is a spin-off of the 1985 action role-playing game Dragon Slayer 2 Xanadu. The game takes place in Morimiya City, which is a fictional suburb in Tokyo. 10 years prior, the city was shaken by a devastating earthquake that was caused by an entity from a mysterious other world called the Eclipse, which is home to hostile beings called Greed. Main protagonist Ko Tokisaka becomes embroiled in events surrounding the Eclipse. Ko and his expanding group of allies look to investigate and prevent disaster as it encroaches on the real world or others try to use it for their own goals. The story is progressed very slowly at the start, but as you progress to the last few chapters of the game, it will be very exciting. The open world lets you explore and talk to NPCs, do side quests, buy upgrades and equipments, interact with your party members during friendship episodes with affinity shards during your free time, which share similarities to Persona. Only issues I have with it is that dungeons are kinda repetitive, well, as expected from a dungeon crawler game, and the combat doesn't quite reach the stratospheric bar set by the most recent East games. But it is nonetheless highly enjoyable. Player takes a party up to 3 into each dungeon. Only one character is active, but the others can be switched in immediately with a single button press. Changing characters is a key part of combat, with each character having their own attack element and virtually every enemy having an elemental weakness. Whether you play the original beta game or not, Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus is such a phenomenal action RPG dungeon crawler that every fan of the genre needs to check out, with its satisfying fast-paced team-based combat, great soundtrack, charming world, and beautiful character designs. If you're a fan of Nihon Falcom, it's a crime you haven't tried this game yet. It is one of those great JRPGs set in modern Japan. Vandal Hearts 2 is a tactical role-playing game for PS1 developed and published by Konami. Many gamers before have tried to play this game but gave up after not understanding how to play it. The game requires a lot of patience, and if you're willing to learn the complexities of battle and teach yourself strategies to win, then the reward is well worth the effort. It's not really difficult for those who love the genre, it's just it takes time to fully understand the mechanics. Vandal Hearts 2 takes place in the country of Natra and follows the story of Joshua from childhood until adulthood, focusing his progress through the civil war that tears his home country apart. The early stages of the game introduce the hero and his childhood companions and act as a prologue to the future events in the hero's adult life. The battle system is called dual turn system that centers on moving at the same time as your opponent, as opposed to most games in the genre where you and your opponent take turns. The battles give you strategizing what your opponent will do next. If you can guess correctly, you can do many things to gain the upper hand and in battle, such as moving a member of your party to block, dodge, lure, or attack an opponent. As you play the game, you will teach yourself tactics to outsmart your opponents. What I like about Vandal Hearts 2 is that you can go back and revisit areas or map you've already been to, which is not present in their first sequel, and it has a better storyline setting and characters, and the multitude of equipment, skills, and customization. Vandal Hearts 1 and 2 are both fantastic strategy RPGs with a twist of gore, bloody splatter realness. Both these games are so underrated during their time. The Grandia series is a very underrated JRPG series, and all three titles deserves a recognition. Grandia 2 is the second game by Game Arts and Rocket Studio, originally from Dreamcast and got ported for the PlayStation 2. It is a sequel to the original Grandia, but it's a separate and totally different story. It focuses on a boy named Ryudo, a mercenary who is stuck in a religious war, and his fight against the revival of the evil god Valmar, along with Elena, who is a songstress of Granas who got possessed by Milenia, the wings of Valmar. Ryudo, intrigued by this whole situation between Elena and Milenia and the promises of gold made to him by the father of the village, he accepts the job of escorting Elena to the cathedral in hopes that folk Zera will be able to help Elena exorcise Milenia out of her. Along the way, they'll meet new friends and enemies, explore dungeons, fight bosses, watch dialogues between party members, and the love triangle between the three protagonists. The battle system works this way. There are no random encounters. Instead, you are able to see the enemies on the environment, so you can either avoid the enemies or fight them. You will need to equip a mana egg, which allows you to use different kinds of magic and skills from a skill book that you can use in battles. Combined with a fantastic turn-based battle system, great customization features, and wonderful visuals, Grandia 2 may have the same cliché story, but it tells it with a brilliant gameplay, designs, and excellent graphics. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, also known as Espolis Denki 2, is a role-playing video game with puzzle elements developed by Neverland and published in Japan in 1995 by Taito. The game is prequel set 99 years before Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, which tells the story of how the Sinistrals first appeared in the world and battles fought against them. The story is centered around the hero Maxim, a swordsman from the town of Elcid who is born with natural ability to fight and is destined to destroy the Sinistrals. Throughout the game, Maxim is joined by other talented warriors of heroes of legend such as Tia, his childhood friend who has a romantic interest in Maxim, Guy, a wandering warrior who joins Maxim after he rescued his sister, Dekar, the powerful bodyguard of Prince Alex and Bound Kingdom, Lexis, a brilliant inventor, Artea, an elven bowman, and Selan, commander of the Farsalite army who becomes Maxim's wife in mid-story. While traveling on the world map, your party is vulnerable to random enemy encounters. It's here that you can take part in battles where you'll gain valuable experience and gold. This allows you to level up your characters, not to mention gain money that can be used to purchase better armor, weapons, and other useful items. If it's one thing that the Super Nintendo system had a lot of, it was RPGs. Some were good, some were bad, and some were outstanding. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals would fall into the latter category. Not only does it offer an amazing turn-based combat system, but it also supports one of the all-time great RPG storylines of the 16-bit era, or any other era for that matter. Couple that with an excellent soundtrack and you have a Super Nintendo RPG that simply should not be missed. Honestly, this game deserves a remake. Next is Legend of Legaia is a unique JRPG with a mix of turn-based and fighting game. Published by Sony and developed by Procyon. The game takes place in a fantasy world where humanity exists along strange magical creatures called Seru, who aid humanity with supernatural powers. However, a mysterious mist appears and the Seru become rampant, opposing humanity and causing the collapse of civilization. Van, the protagonist being unaffected by the mist, awakens the power of the tree in the center of his village known as Genesis Tree, and removes the mist and the Seru from the village. With his newfound power, he travels across the world to restore Genesis trees and stop the mist. The battle system is very inventive, sharing some similarities to Xanadu. When entered in battle, each of the three characters in the game named Van, Noah, and Gala possesses a bar or gauge which measures how many physical moves they are able to execute during each turn. Commands can create killer combos and multiple hits on a single enemy, which is very addictive and satisfying once you fully understand the mechanics. There are a lot of mini games along the way and a vast of areas for you to explore. Visually, Legend of Legaia is pretty similar to Final Fantasy VII. The game's story is one of the best out there, and the atmosphere created through the game's soundtrack and the visuals are perfectly in keeping with the themes and ideas set out through the narrative. Some mediocre dialogue does detract from the experience at times, but given the quality of the overall package, it's pretty easy to excuse. Overall, battle system is rather enjoyable and oftentimes even strategic, but because of all the inputs you have to make each round and the discovery arts being such a key gameplay element, battles do tend to be a bit slow. Legend of Legaia is criminally underrated RPG from the PS1 that truly brings back nostalgia that I'm sure most people can relate to. Rouge Galaxy is an action role-playing video game developed by Level 5 and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2. The game follows the adventure of Jaster Rogue, a young agricultural worker living on an isolated planet who becomes involved in a galactic conflict and learns the fate of the entire galaxy lies in his hands. Rouge Galaxy is a pirate-themed adventure that's packed with delightfully weird concepts, a talking toad that chews on weapons to make better ones, a drunken battle-axe-wielding cybernetic bulldog, and a C-3PO wannabe robot named Steve are just a few of the freaks you'll encounter, but the game is presented as a serious space opera and not a wacky parody. Combat is central to Rouge Galaxy, in which you'll spend most of your time wandering around in vast winding environments, running into packs of enemies, monsters along the way. The action-oriented nature of the battles is immediately apparent since you're able to shoot as well as slash with your sword almost as quickly as you can tap the buttons on the controller. You can also defend to minimize damage received from enemies, as well as use items and various special abilities called revelations. Rouge Galaxy is one of those games where when you first start playing, you do not know if you can get straight into the story. After a while, the game does get better and better, and then you cannot stop playing. Rouge Galaxy ultimately feels like a mixture of Final Fantasy XII and Dark Cloud 2, and is colorful, lighthearted, and lively, with straightforward gameplay which is undoubtedly a great combination. With its gorgeous visual, its galaxy-spanning story, and dozens of hours of gameplay, Rouge Galaxy was ahead of its time. It's just sad that only a few people can appreciate this RPG, and it definitely deserves some love for being so underrated. It's not easy to capture lightning in a bottle once, let alone twice. Yet developer Vanillaware has managed to do exactly that. Odin Spear Leifthrasir is an absolutely amazing remake of their 2007 side-scrolling action RPG that recreates and enhances everything I adored about the original, while strengthening and expanding its combat and role-playing to create one of the best gameplay experiences I've had in a long time. The story is told from the perspective of a young girl named Alice reading a series of books in her attic, with 5 initial storylines or books playing out between the 5 main characters and overlapping at multiple points. The 5 main protagonists are Gwendoline, a Valkyrie and daughter to the demon lord Odin, who has lived for years in the shadow of her sister Griselda; Cornelius, the prince of Titania turned into a puka; Mercedes, daughter of Elfaria and later the reluctant queen of Ringford; the Shadow Knight Oswald, a dark knight in service to Ringford who was found abandoned as a baby and adopted by Melvin; and Velvet, a survivor from the kingdom of Valentine who hides her identity as Odin's illegitimate daughter and has been dubbed the Forest Witch. Embark on a journey in the fantasy continent of Orion during a war between the nations of Ragnanival and Ringford over a weapon called the Crystallization Cauldron. Combat, which uses a beat-em-up style battle system, takes place within these areas and revolves around the player character using a combination of physical attacks and cyber skills. Odin's Spear Leifthrasir is a masterpiece of game design and one of the forgotten gems of the PS2 era. I can't recommend it enough, and it stands head and shoulders above other remakes on how to get the job done. For those that never experienced the original, it is a must-buy. But even for those with fond memories of the glorious Vanillaware classic, this package is more than worth a second dip. We wish we could see more remasters made with the same respect and love for the original material, which is faster, prettier, flashier than it's ever been. Suikoden is an underrated JRPG series back in the 90s to 2000s. It recently got the hype and more people seems to know it more and more because of the upcoming spiritual successor Eiyuden Chronicle and the 2 HD remaster of Suikoden 1 and 2. If you ever ask a JRPG enthusiast or a Suikoden fan what's their favorite game in the franchise, they'll mostly likely choose Suikoden 2, which I have no issue because it is true. But if you ask me when it comes to story, I honestly prefer Suikoden 5. The war drama surrounding the throne in the Kingdom of Falena is so memorable and iconic. The protagonist of the game is the hero Prince Freyhadur Falena, who is a handsome silent hero like all the protagonists in the series. His mother is the Queen of Falena, Queen Archtat, who wears the Sun Rune, and his father is the commander of the Queen's Knight, Ferid, and his little sister is the next in line to the throne, Princess Limslia. The first several hours of gameplay are mostly build up and introduction, establishing the core cast of players solidly in the gamer's mind: conniving senators, foppish courtesans, disciplined gladiators, royal relatives, mysterious assassins, and so on. But after the attack on the queendom led by the two main antagonists, father and son Giselle and Marskal Godwyn, that's where things get much more interesting as the prince escapes from Godwyn's army along with his Aunt Sayalid's newly appointed Queen's Knight Sir George Prime and his personal bodyguard Leon, who is a Queen's Knight apprentice. As they keep on retreating, they'll meet new allies, new stars of destinies to join you, unlock your own headquarters below the Sereth Lake, solve mysteries of the Dawn and Twilight Rune, fight in real-time strategic war battles, a rock paper scissors style dual combat, and lots of mini games for you to enjoy. The combat system returns of the 6-person individually commanded party, and as usual features a dizzying array of combination of runes you can equip with variety of effects. Suikoden 5 is so damn good. I can't remember how many times I replayed this game already. The story is one of the very best in all gaming in my opinion, even surpassing some of the previous Suikoden titles in its intricacy and brilliance with its complex, realistic characters and motives, and a plot that draws you in like a good book. It is a very underrated sequel and it deserves the same recognition Suikoden 2 is getting from the fans of the series. At first, I am very hesitant to put this game on this list because I know this game is known for all the wrong reasons. Compared to the overrated titles like Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X, FF12 is in no power to be someone's favorite Final Fantasy RPG. Some of you might attack me in the comment section, but I stand with my opinion and the poll from the community. This is a game that has been released in several modern consoles with HD remaster, although it is known by many yet still not getting the praise it deserves. Final Fantasy XII is a masterpiece that started the revolution in the series, and it came out in the wrong time since it got a lot of harsh critics from the fans. It's a flawed great game with some issues about some characters which are not really essential in the story. The story mainly focuses on Ash, who is the princess of Dalmasca. Aside from that, the story is something fresh which focuses on struggles of characters caught up in a web of politics and war rather than a stereotypical saving the universe sort of adventure. Nadesite is a powerful source of magical energy in the world of Ivalice. Historically, most Nadesite was created by the Ocuria, but Arcadia has discovered how to create artificial manufactured Nadesite, which is weaker than the facted Nadesite, although such use of Nadesite damages one's sanity and eventually causes the host's body to break down into mist. Ash's goal is to eliminate these Nadesites and achieve her goal, reclaiming her throne since she is the last true descendant of King Raithwall, the Dynast King, and she needs to avenge her own kingdom. When I first played this game in the PS2, I really don't get the story much since it's very intricate and very political. What I like about it the most is its combat system. It lets you program your party members' AI to do specific attack, magics, technique, and items to use with gambits. The characters can summon espers to aid in combat which are not really that useful for me, and the misquickening involving the real-time input of button commands, requiring fast reflexes to chain together attacks before a timer depletes. In the original game, all the characters shared one license board method, which is limited customization, but in the International Sojax Job System Edition, players could choose 2 combinations from the 12 different classes based on a sign of the Sojak for their characters, which is much better in my opinion. You can explore in a vast open world full of monsters and secrets, which is so exciting and thrilling, visiting flying cities, caves, tombs, mountains, coasts, and more. In this world, there are bosses, espers to attain, and quests to hunt strong monsters from NPCs, which made the game so much interesting. Final Fantasy XII is such a great JRPG, and it's either you hate it or you love it. In my case, in this game has a special place in my memory since it was the game that me and my best friend really enjoyed the most when we were kids. The game was ahead of its time because of the open world and battle mechanics, stepping away from the traditional turn-based genre. With an engaging story, incredible visuals, great audio, and a cohesive and epic experience, FF12 is easily one of the best JRPGs that even up to this day is very underappreciated.